Okay, so imagine a childhood, but one that isn't tied to a single town or a single country or even one continent. A childhood where your backyard literally changes every few months and your friends are scattered across, I don't know, a dozen time zones. Well, this is the reality for a growing number of families all over the world. So let's really dive into what it means to be a third culture kid.
And this isn't some deep philosophical question. It is the central and, frankly, relentless question for a huge group of kids and young adults. For them, asking where are you from is probably the single most complicated question in the world. You've probably heard the term before, third culture kids. But here's what almost no one talks about: the hidden identity crisis that comes along with this amazing lifestyle. For explorers, it's a life of nonstop global adventure for sure, but there's a really profound personal challenge right at its heart. So, what does this term actually mean? And, how did this whole lifestyle become a global movement? Okay, here's the simple version. For settlers, imagine you have an American passport, but you grew up in Thailand, then Brazil, and then Kenya. The thing is, you don't feel fully American, but you're not fully Thai or Brazilian or Kenyan either. You basically live in this unique cultural space that's somewhere in between. And this is not some tiny, niche phenomenon anymore, not at all. Thanks to the whole remote work explosion, there are now over 200,000 posts on Instagram with the hashtag digital nomad family. This is quickly becoming a mainstream path for a whole new generation. And for people in this crowd, it's really not about just ticking off destinations on a bucket list. For social smarts, world schooling is an intentional philosophy. It's about deep cultural immersion, using the entire world as your classroom. The idea is to learn from the world, not just to see it. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This kind of unconventional upbringing actually forges a very specific, and I mean powerful, set of skills. Let's look at the long-term strategic advantage this can create. Yeah, researchers consistently find that these third culture kids develop what you could almost call superpowers. So here are the big three that give them a serious edge in our super connected world. First up, radical adaptability. I mean, think about it. When change is the only constant in your childhood, you get really, really good at problem solving on the fly. Figuring out a new subway system or navigating weird social rules just becomes second nature. It builds this deep-seated resilience that is just invaluable. Second, and this is a huge one for anyone who values human connection, is deep empathy. For social smarts, you just can't learn this from a textbook. When you've actually lived inside different cultures, you instinctively get that there are multiple, totally valid ways of seeing the world. It's a skill that builds bridges, not walls. And finally, there's linguistic fluidity. For these kids, learning a new language isn't some boring academic exercise. Nope. It happens totally naturally, while, say, bargaining for fruit at a street market or just playing with local kids. They don't just absorb words, they absorb the culture behind them. But it's not all superpowers and globe-trotting adventures. Let's explore the hidden pattern here, the real emotional toll this lifestyle can take. It's something these families know all too well. This quote, this one really gets to the heart of the whole TCK experience. It's this profound sense of rootlessness. They have connections to so many places, but a real, true sense of home can feel just impossibly out of reach. So this is the central conflict right here. In your passport country, people think you're exotic or different. But then in your host country, you're always the foreigner. This constant cycle of trying to adapt but never quite fitting in, well, it can lead to a kind of emotional exhaustion. And this is the brilliant solution. Their sense of belonging isn't tied to a flag or a piece of dirt. It's found with other people who get it, who share this unique in-between experience. Their tribe isn't based on geography, it's based on experience. For people like us who've moved around a bit, this just makes perfect sense. For social smarts and for settlers.
Okay, so if that's the big challenge, and the answer is finding your tribe in this third culture, how do families actually pull this off? It's not as chaotic as you might think. In fact, there's a surprisingly practical framework behind it all. Here it is, the strategic approach broken down into 3 core parts. It's a clear, step-by-step model that successful world schooling families use to create some stability and structure while they're constantly on the move, for strategists and for settlers. First, it's all about the mindset shift to slow
travel. This means you're staying in one place for weeks or even months at a time, not just a few days. It's about building routines, joining the local library, shopping at the same markets, and forming real, actual connections, not just snapping photos of landmarks. Second is the toolkit, and this part's crucial. Education has to be flexible, but it also has to be stable and accredited. And this is where a whole ecosystem of global online schools comes into play. You can see a few examples right here. They offer everything from project-based learning to full-on IB diplomas. This gives kids a consistent curriculum and a steady peer group, no matter what time zone they wake up in. It's a super safe and practical way to get a world-class education anywhere on Earth. And the final, absolutely vital step, finding your tribe. For social smarts, there's a massive, and I mean massive, global community of these world schooling families. They connect in online groups, and they organize real-world meetups and pop-up communities in places like Thailand or Portugal. This provides that critical social anchor, not just for the kids, but for the parents too. So when you boil it all down, the key takeaway is that these kids are so much more than just travelers. They're living experiments in a totally new form of global citizenship, one where your identity is built on shared human experiences instead of lines on a map. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future, doesn't it? As more and more people grow up with this fluid sense of belonging, what happens to our old school ideas of patriotism, community, and home? The world schoolers, they're already out there living the answer.
If this touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share it with your family. Save this for more meaningful content ahead.